So imagine the government passes a law banning an entire class of firearms. Now in response, you challenge that law and you tell the judge, this new law violates the Constitution and must be struck down immediately. And instead of defending that law, the state comes back and says essentially, we're not ready to argue that yet or defend this law. Now that's exactly what happened right now in a major federal lawsuit challenging a state's ban on short-barreled rifles. And now the court has stepped in and made a move that tells us a lot about where this case is heading next. So let's break down what is happening in this critical SBR challenge. Now, before we jump into this video, if you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply by subscribing. You can also hit the like button that just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content, and so it shares it with more people. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you will know what this case involves. This is the Firearms Policy Coalition lawsuit against the state of New Jersey, challenging the state's ban and their outright restrictions on the possession and purchase of short-barreled rifles within the state. This lawsuit was filed after Congress reduced the federal NFA tax to $0 under the One Big Beautiful Bill. And since that happened, we've seen a wave of coordinated legal challenges aimed at dismantling the remaining restrictions on suppressors, SBRs, and other NFA items. Now, FPC's core argument in this case is very straightforward. They argue that short-barreled rifles are in fact arms protected by the Second Amendment. They argue they're in common use, and there is no historical tradition of banning these items outright. So New Jersey's total prohibition violates the Constitution under Bruin and must be struck down. Now, here's where things continue to escalate. Now, after FPC filed its motion for summary judgment, essentially telling the court that this case can be decided as a matter of law, New Jersey did not respond with historical evidence defending their ban. Instead, the state argued that the motion is premature, that discovery has not yet occurred, and that the court should delay deciding that constitutional issue. That procedural maneuver is the newest development, and it's critical to understand where this case now goes. New Jersey also recently filed a formal answer to the lawsuit, and the state is asking the court to dismiss the case entirely right here and now, as well as they wanted the motion for summary judgment to be dismissed. And so essentially they want this to go through a traditional track of full discovery, full review, and a full merits decision. First, New Jersey claims in their answer that the plaintiffs don't even have the right to bring this case. They argue that the plaintiffs lack standing and that the case is not yet ripe for review. So in other words, New Jersey says no one has been harmed enough by this law, so the courts should not hear this case. Second, New Jersey claims absolute and qualified immunity. They argue that state officials cannot be sued for enforcing these laws. So this is another routine defense, but immunity does not apply when officials are enforcing unconstitutional statutes like New Jersey is doing here with their SBR restrictions. Third, New Jersey argues that the SBR ban does not violate the Second Amendment because it is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation. So they're pointing to the Bruin framework to say that this SBR law is constitutional. So in other words, they argue that even if SBRs are in fact arms protected by the Second Amendment, they can still ban them because governments have historically, in their eyes, regulated dangerous and unusual weapons. But here's the problem for New Jersey in this case. Under Bruin, the burden is on the state, the government, to prove a historical analog, and there is no founding era tradition of banning short-barreled rifles. There was no SBR bans back in 1791. There were no SBR bans in 1868, and the NFA laws did not even exist until way later. So that is a huge constitutional gap that the state of New Jersey has to get over to prove the constitutionality of their restriction. Now, here's where things are currently developing in this case. Following a conference back at the end of March, the court issued an order that directly affects both sides. The court administratively terminated the plaintiffs here at FPC's motion for a summary judgment. That means that the motions are not denied, but they are taken off the table, at least for now. And importantly, the court made very clear that the plaintiffs can refile those motions at a later date based on some additional discovery. And so they're just saying it was not appropriate right now for you to file that motion. So in essence, the district court bought New Jersey's argument that the delay in this case was needed for further evidence and arguments. The court is effectively agreeing, at least for now, with New Jersey's argument that the case is not in the right procedural posture for a final ruling. But this is also very important because this is not actually a win for New Jersey on the merits. The court did not say that the ban is constitutional. The court did not reject FPC's arguments. All the court said is, not yet, we're not going to review a motion for summary judgment, file that at a later date. Now, New Jersey's main argument was that discovery hasn't taken place yet, and they said that they needed additional time before the court can actually decide this case. They also are arguing that FPC's motion may not comply with certain local procedural requirements, and they're asking the court either to delay the briefing or dismiss that motion on technical grounds, and that's ultimately what the court decided to do with that issue. So in short, New Jersey decided that instead of jumping straight into defending the ban under Bruin's historical test, the state tried to slow the timeline, and at least for now, that strategy actually worked. The court has effectively paused the summary judgment stage, so the case will now move forward through the next procedural steps of discovery, and those have now been set for next month. All of those papers have to be filed, so they're moving through the full discovery phase, and that's also going to help kind of maybe develop some of these standing questions where New Jersey is saying, well, no one has actually truly been harmed by these SBR restrictions. Well, now more evidence can come in to show, well, yes, this law does in fact impact people, not only because it restricts their two-way rights, but maybe there are actual individualized cases within New Jersey that show that these SBR laws have been applied to them. But eventually the court will have to decide, does New Jersey's SBR ban survive under Bruin? Is there historical support for banning SBRs, or does this law collapse like many others after that Bruin framework is applied? And if FPC wins here in this case, it opens the door for striking down other state SBR bans, and this could apply to other states, including California, New York, Illinois, and others who have these restrictions on NFA items like suppressors, SBRs, and other NFA items like I mentioned. So that's where things currently stand right now in this FPC versus Platkin case in the state of New Jersey, going after New Jersey's outright ban on the possession of SBRs. New Jersey was successful in slowing this case down, at least for now, but the core constitutional question is still very much alive and is now going to be developed further. More evidence and discovery phase is going to happen going forward. And then also I would anticipate once that is kind of wrapped up, FPC maybe will once again introduce a motion for summary judgment, trying to resolve this case before it goes to a full merits trial. And that is probably the ultimate goal, is to get this law struck down on a motion for summary judgment. So as soon as things develop more in this case, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All of those things help to fuel the algorithm and just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content, and so it shares it with more people. I also want to mention that we still have the night vision giveaway going on right now. That's going to end on May 1st. So if you're interested, if you still want to get in on that giveaway, you can still do that. There is still time. I will leave links down below in the details section, also in the pinned comment, so you can check out that giveaway to win that pair of night vision goggles. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.